Hello.
Hello, Mr. Colucci. Hi from Germany. Nice to see
Hello.
you. Hi.
Nice to hear you.
Yeah, here is my camera. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Perfect. Nice to see you. See you in 5 minutes.
Yeah. How were the other sessions until now, with regard to numbers of participants, just for me to have an idea?
Yeah, we had yesterday, I think, more or less 20 attendees, but we are on YouTube streaming, and we opened the session today. So we are expecting more attendees. Yeah, we are live now, so I would mute myself right now. So yeah, see you in a bit.
Do you want me to turn off my camera before?
Yeah, that would be good. That would be great. And then I will moderate you.
You will announce me.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the third and final day of the ExpoVirtual GreenTech. My name is Marta and I will moderate today's session as well. I'm happy to have you with us today. We heard yesterday very interesting country presentations from our partners from the German Chambers of Commerce in Latin America, and we will now continue our country forum with other interesting presentations from Southern America and the Caribbean as well. So I'm really proud and thankful to have our cooperation partners from the chambers with us today. And I will now introduce you the first speaker for today. I welcome on stage Mr. Alessandro Colucci. He is head of market entry and business development services at the German Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in São Paulo. Thank you so much, Mr. Colucci, for being with us today. We are looking forward to hearing more about Brazil.
Thank you, Marta, for having me. Now comes the very famous and almost traditional question. Can you see the presentation?
We can see your presentation, not in
Perfect.
presentation mode right now, but we can see it very good.
It should be in presentation mode now, right?
Not yet.
It's not in presentation mode?
No.
Should be.
We can see it in presentation mode. Maybe if you change your screen in Zoom.
Let me see. Let me do the following then. So if there is a problem, I'm going to just zoom in. Let's do it this way. It's very strange, actually.
No, that's too big right now. So yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you can just click another time on the symbol to go in presentation mode, and if it's not working, then we can just leave it this way.
Now?
No, we can't see it. I think maybe you are using another screen, so you have to change the screen in Zoom.
I see. Maybe I have to. Yeah, I think I know what I have to do now. I'm stopping the sharing. I'm going back.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
No, we can't see any presentation now.
It's not appearing?
No, I can't see anything on that. So we just leave it as it was before. You can just share your screen.
Just a second. I have to.
Ah, yeah, now it's, yeah, now we can see your presentation. Yeah, and now also in presentation mode. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry for that. Well, I've been asked to make a presentation about Brazil's potential in the energy sector. How does it look right now and what are the perspectives? Of course, we always have to have in mind the interests of potential suppliers of technology and consulting services when we talk about the Brazilian energy sector. This is the content of our presentation. Quick look at the current energy matrix and more specifically about the electricity market. And then the next topic will be a very specific topic, which is very dear to Brazil, to the Brazilian government and industry: ethanol, biogas, which is on the rise, photovoltaics and wind energy, which is on the rise again. Special case is nuclear energy. What happens to the natural gas market? There has been some liberalization moves, and then we, especially from the German chambers in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, we work in an alliance in order to foster knowledge about the application of so-called green hydrogen in the future. So let's have a quick look on the current energy market. 46% of Brazil's energy consumption is based on renewable resources. This is a number which is the envy of a lot of other countries in the world, especially in the first world. I make a particular case out of this because Brazil has received a lot of a bad reputation during to the burnings or the logging of the Amazon rainforest, some actions and especially speeches of the current Brazilian president. But notwithstanding that, we still have an energy matrix which is extremely dominated by renewable energy sources. And we see, this is something like a conclusion, that biogas and green hydrogen have a huge potential for expansion. You can see the pie chart here. We have 20% sugarcane derivatives, we have 14% hydropower, and we have lots of other renewable sources that contribute to the energy matrix. And the numbers are even more impressive when we have a look at the electricity matrix, where you can see that 83% of the electricity is generated from renewable sources, with the dominance of hydropower. You can see it, the deep blue, 65%, which is actually a problem right now because the southern part and especially the southeastern part of Brazil is right now suffering from a drought. The last couple of years have been particularly dry, which stresses the hydropower plants. They have to reduce their capacity. It also has consequences, of course, for the drinking water supply. Right yesterday, we had the 1st of December, and we got news that rain levels in the state of São Paulo have been below average, and have been below average in some other regions of the southeast of Brazil, where the biggest chunk of the population is concentrated. So there is a need in order to diversify away from hydropower to other renewable energy sources, because the population is still growing, the economy is growing. So as a consequence, the need of electricity is growing as well. There are some plans. In Brazil, the Ministry of Mines and Energy is responsible for defining goals and strategies for the energy matrix, energy policy. And attached to the ministry, the Ministério de Minas e Energia, which is the MME or MEME, there is an agency called EPE, which is the one which does the technical studies, which is the real brain of the ministry in terms when it comes to energy. And the planning foresees that the energy consumption will increase a lot. And at the same time, as a percentage, the renewable sources of energy will be planned to increase by 27% in the same period. So there is there are some ambitious plans that the government is foreseeing. And let's have a look at how the situation is right now. The energy market is, the electricity market is regulated by ANEEL, the state regulator, and the Brazilian electricity market, to put it in simple terms, is divided in two areas. There is the area which is regulated and where the simple consumer is affected, and then there's the so-called free market, which also has, of course, its own regulations. When you are a small household or a small company, you have to take the energy provided by the local monopolist. In the case of the state of São Paulo, for instance, it is Enel, the Italian provider of electricity, and there's no way how you can escape. It's not like in Germany, where there has been waves of liberalization. Small businesses and private consumers have to take what you can find. On the contrary, you have the ambiente de contratação livre, regulated by the Câmara de Comercialização de Energia Elétrica, where you can purchase the electricity on an individual basis. This applies for big consumers of electricity, big industries especially. On the next slide, I'm going to describe a little bit more in detail how the rules are in order for you to leave the regulated market and be able to purchase your electricity in the so-called free market. There's another specialty applying right now. As I already mentioned, we are going through this hydric crisis, the water crisis. I hope it won't get as bad as it got in 2014, 2015. But there are some measures that have to be taken by the supplying companies. They have to turn on thermal power plants, which run on gas, which run on oil, which run on coal, and their operating costs are much higher. And in order to finance that, the consumer has to pay the price, literally. And you can see it on the bill. You have the surcharge called Bandera Vermelha, which means red flag. And there are even different levels of red flag. You can see it, it's a surcharge of 9.49 reais per 100 kilowatt hours. And that's it's a direct consequence of the climate change and some regional climatic phenomena that we're having in the Southern American semi-continent. Now, how does it work with this electricity market? You can use the free market contracts if you're on the range of 500 kilowatts to 1,500 kilowatts. And if the energy supplier uses renewable sources or small hydropower plants, and you are free to choose whatever supplier there is when you consume more than 1,500 kilowatts. There is a kind of liberalization going on. The threshold will be reduced in a couple of weeks to 1,000 kilowatt, and in 2023 to 500 kilowatt. And there are high hopes that this will, of course, ease the cost burden for industry and commerce. Right now, we count 8,300 consumers, companies mainly, that use the free market, which is represents a third or 30% of the electricity consumption in Brazil. Let's talk about ethanol. When there were the oil crisis in the 1970s, the Brazilian government decided to foster the production of sugarcane. Sugarcane, an old imported crop, imported by the Portuguese colonizers, of course, in order to produce mainly sugar and drinking alcohol. But the idea in the 1970s was to use it in order to produce ethanol, in order to make the cars run, in order to reduce the complete dependency that Brazil had from importing oil. In the 1970s, it was, of course, already known that there were huge oil deposits in Brazil. That was old knowledge, but the governments didn't foster it enough. So Brazil was still extremely dependent on importing it. And since the Brazilian governments are always playing the card of independence and of autarky, regardless if they are from the center, the right, or the left, they said that they have to foster this national energy source. And it's still a very consistent policy. You know that in Brazil, the so-called Bancada Ruralista, the lobby group, which lobbies for the countryside and the farmers, the medium and big farmers, is very strong. So we have some laws and we have some decrees like the Portaria Mapa. Mapa is the agricultural ministry of Brazil, that says that at the filling station, you have to have 25% or sometimes 27% on alcohol in your gasoline. And of course, you can also tank ethanol, purely ethanol. 85% of the cars that are sold in Brazil have the so-called flex fuel engines, which have been mainly developed in Brazil with the help of German companies as well. So this is no problem to drive on gasoline, ethanol, a mixture of both. Right now, since the prices for gasoline are attached to the international prices. People with small pockets prefer to spend, prefer to buy ethanol, even though ethanol doesn't have the same energy density. It's roughly half the energy density of normal gas, of other gasoline. They prefer to buy that because that's the money that they have. Even if I'm not able to run my 400 kilometers, it will be only 200 kilometers, but that's the money I can spend right now. So I'm tanking, I'm fueling with ethanol. There are also some efforts in order to foster the production of so-called second generation ethanol, which is based on the remainder of what's left of the crops, of sugarcane crops and other crops, which wasn't used before that. And that's also the bridge to biogas. In 2019, biomass plants had an installed capacity of 14.8 million kilowatt, and we see that the potential for the production of biogas is extremely high. Just to give you an idea, we have roughly 9,000 to 10,000 biogas plants in Germany, close to 10,000. In Brazil, which is more than 20 times the size of Germany with a higher agricultural output per hectare, it's a couple of hundred biogas plants. And some of them also with some very, very old-fashioned technology. So there's very much space for improving the already existing biogas plants, making them more efficient and expanding them. Expansion is one of the big issues I would like to stress out as a takeaway of my presentation here. Last year in 2020, 22 terawatt hours of electricity were generated from biomass, only in the regions southwest and midwest of Brazil. Just for you to have an idea, the Brazilians, they group their regions into macro regions. Southeastern Brazil is the area of São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Espírito Santo, and Minas Gerais. And the Midwest is the so-called agricultural frontier, where the cowboys live and have the huge farms, which is the states of Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, Mato Grosso, and if you want to, you can also include the capital, Brasília. Yeah, once again, stressing out the potential for biogas. There is a lot of input factors. You have the agricultural waste, like I already mentioned, sugarcane production, but also what is leftovers of, well, slaughterhouses, animal protein, and also the topics of landfill and wastewater treatment plants. What happens to the sludges? What happens to the elements that are not being used? 45% of the municipal waste, for instance, is organic waste. It all can be or could be directed to biogas plants. One of the big players in this industry is a conglomerate called Cosan, and the subsidiary of Cosan is Raízen, which runs a huge biogas plant in the state of São Paulo with a capacity of 21 megawatt. All those information here are checked with associations or the EPE, which is those aforementioned agency of the ministry. So all this data here is publicly available, and you can easily find them doing a short Google research. Photovoltaics and wind energy. This is something that really, I was surprised when I came to live in Brazil in 2016. I was really surprised to see that photovoltaic is not such a big issue, not a big deal, but this is changing rapidly because of the possibility to produce energy for yourself. This is another factor that I should mention. In Brazil, you are not allowed to sell your surplus of energy when you are a private producer of electricity, but you can get credits, which will be deduced from the energy bill that you will receive from the local monopolist. The so-called smart metering is the catchword in this case. So we are having those photovoltaics and wind energy capacities being scaled up in Brazil. What's going on? We're having 8,300 wind wheels, and this capacity of 18 gigawatt is expected to grow to 28 gigawatt by 2024. 2024 is around the corner. We are talking about onshore wind energy production, but there are also some projects and plans circulating for offshore wind production, wind energy production. There are two areas in Brazil which are extremely privileged. You might even see it a little bit on this map on the globe here, which is some areas in the northeast of Brazil and in the southernmost part of Brazil, which have steady winds. Especially the northeastern part of Brazil has very steady wind velocity because of the trade winds. And the interesting aspect is that the northeastern part is also one of the most sunny places in Brazil. So you have a lot of sun during the day and you have wind during the day and the night. So you can cope quite well with the problem of intermittence. Photovoltaics, as I already said, is something that has been neglected nowadays, that purchasing the capex cost for purchasing photovoltaic plants, modules, has been going down a lot. It's becoming more and more interesting for energy project developers to also think about developing photovoltaic plants. In Brazil, we talk about this centralized and decentralized photovoltaics or energy production in general. Decentralized is a different word called geração distribuída for you to say that it's actually a private company which produces energy for its own consumption. And as I already said, the surpluses can be fed into the grid in exchange for credit, not for money. We always compare Brazil to Germany, right? We are the German-Brazilian Chamber of Commerce here, and the darkest corner of Brazil in terms of sunlight is sunnier than the sunniest place in Germany. So the potential for the expansion of photovoltaics is huge. The catch-up demand is huge as well. You can see that an extremely sunny tropical country like Brazil has an installed capacity of 9.4 gigawatt, and rather gray Germany is leading with 54 gigawatt. I think this says everything about the potential of this country. Small chapter, nuclear energy. When we talk about the energy matrix, we have to talk about nuclear energy as well. There is a nuclear power plant in Angra dos Reis, which is a city close to Rio de Janeiro, in the state of Rio de Janeiro, actually quite close to the border of the state of São Paulo. And there are two reactors over there, one reactor built by Siemens and the other one by Westinghouse. And for years, they were building a third reactor, which is completed by 2/3, but for lots of reasons that I'm not having the time for to dig deeper, the construction of the third block has been stopped a couple of years ago. And until now, my impression is it's not a very high, the issue is not very high on the political agenda. There are thoughts that the third block could be built in a public-private partnership program, but on that front, I don't see a lot of news. So nuclear energy, this is the takeaway, exists in Brazil, but it doesn't include any, it's not strategically very important. Natural gas. Natural gas is mainly imported from Bolivia, for instance. There are pipelines going from the border to the industrial centers, for instance, here in the state of São Paulo. And the natural gas market was recently opened up. There was a liberalization. So now you can apply for a concession at the Agência Nacional de Petróleo, ANP, which is the regulating agency that you can use the pipeline for a couple of years. So the hope is that this liberalization, the higher competition, will drive down the prices. Natural gas is extremely important to lots of industrial sectors in Brazil. Gas pipelines shall be open to new concessionaries, terminals. What is the rationale behind it? There is a de facto monopoly run by Petrobras. Petrobras is a semi-public, semi-private corporation, one of the biggest in Brazil. And you can see that 1 million BTU can be purchased for $4 in the USA. And it's more than 3 times the price in Brazil. So this is a step with which hopefully the custo Brasil, the famous special costs that industries have to face when doing business in Brazil, will go down a little bit. Yeah, as I already mentioned, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Colucci, to interrupt you. I would like to say to you that you have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, green hydrogen is also on the rise. Together with the colleagues of Rio de Janeiro, we are doing a lot of work in order to disseminate information about what it is. It is hydrogen produced by electrolysis, and the electrolysis has to run on renewable energy sources. It is one of the big strategies of the German policy in order to cope with its own goals of the reduction of CO2 emissions. And it's actually part of a program where you can also receive some funds for the introduction, for the production of some pilot plants. There are already, I think the first funding has been awarded a couple of days ago. And we are doing a lot of information events. A colleague of mine did his 2nd German-Brazilian conference on green hydrogen in October. You can see it on YouTube. And I'm using my last minute to do a little bit of advertisement. We are a service provider here at the Chamber of São Paulo with more than 800 members. We are one of the biggest chambers worldwide. We exist since 1916, and Brazil is especially dear to the German industry. 10% of the industrial GDP of Brazil is based on German companies. We help small and medium companies from Germany to get into the Brazilian market by doing market studies, by doing intermediation of partnerships, of contacts, and by organizing delegation trips from Brazil to Germany, but much more from Germany to Brazil. We are a big partner for several ministries in Germany, as well as for the GIZ, which is the German Agency for International Economic Development and Cooperation. And this is the last slide. You can see the Ponte Estaiada, which is a kind of landmark bridge 2 kilometers away from the chamber, spanning over the Rio Pinheiros. And over there, you can find my email address. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Colucci, for this really nice introduction into Brazil. It was really nice to see that there's potential in hydrogen in Brazil, but also in biogas plants. And I think that, as you said, the chamber is the first contact to actually contact where you are entering a new market. So I think that the viewers will see your contacts, and if they're interested in Brazil, then you will be ready to head them. Thank you so much for being with us today, and
Welcome.
have a nice day. See you next time. Now I'm happy to see the next speaker on stage, Mr. Dr. Christian Schauer. He is director at the chamber in Costa Rica, and he will now introduce us into the market Costa Rica. Thanks a lot for being with us, Mr. Dr. Schauer. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I will present, as we were told, we can choose between English and Spanish. I will do the presentation in Spanish. So here I'm sharing now my slide. I hope you can see it. I will present a little bit about Costa Rica. So Costa Rica is a very small country, but there are some principles. Costa Rica, disculpa, voy a cambiar a español. Hay unos principios que Costa Rica está utilizando en una manera bastante bueno, que es la sostenibilidad, el desarrollo, la innovación y todo esto se junta bajo el principio que aquí se llama triple P, que son personas, planeta y prosperidad en también este orden. Acá uno ve claramente que las personas y la planeta vienen antes de la prosperidad para Costa Rica. Ahora, ¿qué es Costa Rica? Es este pedazo aquí en el círculo rojo, muy pequeño en el centro de Centroamérica. Es un país que tiene unos 51.000 kilómetros cuadrados, unos 5.1, 5.2 millón habitantes, pero tiene algunas características bastante interesantes a cuales voy a llegar ahorita en los próximos diapositivas. En una cierta forma, Costa Rica se ve como el farol de Latinoamérica o de Centroamérica en específico, disculpe, de Centroamérica, un poco una fortaleza de estabilidad política, estabilidad económica, también mucha estabilidad en el marco legal, que es de alta importancia para inversionistas y también para empresas que quieren trabajar desde este país. Acá entramos en específico que existe cualquier tipo de acuerdos binacionales y de esta manera es un lugar bastante seguro y bonito para hacer sus negocios. Un tema muy importante en el contexto de esta ley mencionada aquí abajo, la ley de la protección durante la cadena de suministro que va a entrar en Alemania a vigor en el año 2023, es Costa Rica, tiene los estándares sociales, derechos laborales, derechos ambientales, derechos humanos a nivel de Europa. Y esto también entra en el tema de responsabilidad social empresarial, lo que voy a mencionar un poco más tarde, de nuevo en un ejemplo reciente. ¿Qué más tenemos en Costa Rica? Porque decimos que en una cierta forma somos una pequeña fortaleza. Costa Rica se basa en democracia, paz y el Estado social. Acá ven un cañón y un año 1948. Ayer, hace 73 años, Costa Rica abolizó el ejército. Desde este momento, aquí no más hay un ejército, y para decirlo un poco coloquial, si uno se recuerda del mapa donde está Costa Rica, en Latinoamérica, en Centroamérica, estamos en un vecindario que no necesariamente en los últimos 70 años siempre estaba lleno de chicos buenos, sino también de chicos bastante malos. Y en este ambiente, quitar el ejército fue una decisión bastante poderosa del, en este momento, entonces presidente Pepe Figueres. Y él decidió que este dinero que no gastamos en el ejército, ponemos en la educación y en el Estado social. De esta manera, Costa Rica tiene el nivel de educación más alto de Latinoamérica. Subsiguientemente, tiene una fuerza laboral muy bien formada. La gran mayoría es bilingüe, español-inglés. Es el coeficiente más alto de Latinoamérica de personas laborales español-inglés bilingüales. Tenemos la educación dual bajo el modelo alemán. Hay una ley de marco en esto, no solo existe en las empresas, sino hay un modelo país para eso. Y también a nivel universidades es el líder de la región. Ahora llegamos un poco al tema de comercio, porque aquí vamos a hablar de tecnología, de comercio, etc. Hay excelentes relaciones de comercio y económicos con Alemania. Como dijo anteriormente, sostenibilidad es un paradigma importantísimo en Costa Rica, la ecología de todo esto. Costa Rica posee la cifra más alta de inversión extranjera directa por habitante. Por eso, por habitante en Costa Rica se invierte por internacionales más que en cualquier otro país de este mundo. Y sorprendentemente para muchas personas, los principales productos de exportación es tecnología médica, servicios de alto conocimiento y tecnología, alta tecnología, tecnología de punta, tecnología digital en general. Y ahora va un poco también otra sorpresa, qué significa el turismo y la agronomía que uno tradicionalmente relaciona con Costa Rica. 8.2% del BIP, ya incluyendo servicios secundarios como restaurantes, etcétera. La agricultura o agronomía es 7.6%, por eso estamos hablando más o menos de 16%. Eso es bastante poco si uno piensa que la imagen de Costa Rica para mucha gente es piña, banano y vacaciones. Por eso hay algo más. Y exactamente por este algo más, Costa Rica es el único, desde el año pasado, el único miembro de la OCDE en Centroamérica. Lo que, regresando a una otra ley que va a entrar en menos que un mes, es muy importante, que es la ley contra la competencia ilícita a nivel tributario de Alemania, que algunos países de la región va a afectar, otros están bastante amenazados, tienen guindado encima de sus cabezas la espada de Damocles y en algún momento se va a caer. Y acá Costa Rica es completamente seguro. Por eso, bienvenidos aquí si quieren seguridad, si quieren sostenibilidad. Ahora, ¿qué más? Como vieron en el mapa, es como en este estrecho pequeño. Por eso tenemos acceso de aquí a ambos mares. Tenemos acceso al Pacífico, tenemos acceso al Atlántico. Costa Rica, por eso también es un hub de logística. Posee el único puerto de aguas profundas de Centroamérica y los países de la región reciben muchos y exportan muchos de sus bienes por medio de Costa Rica, incluyendo un país como Panamá, recibe 80% de sus bienes por medio de los puertos costarricenses. De esta manera, bastante interesante. Después tenemos 2 aeropuertos internacionales con conexiones para toda Latinoamérica, vuelos directos bastante a Europa, a los Estados Unidos, en parte a Asia, así bien conectado. Y además, hoy al día, si uno habla de conexión, tiene que hablar también de infraestructura digital. Costa Rica es número 7 en velocidad mundialmente en velocidad de datos por medio de teléfono móvil. Así, las circunstancias están hechos. También está en preparación la conexión de estos puertos por medio de transporte ferroviario a la región. Y por eso acá están, en mi opinión, bastante bien ubicados. Ahora vamos al tema ambiental, GreenTech, etcétera. ¿Qué son las circunstancias acá? Casi 100%, 99.78% de la energía eléctrica es producido en Costa Rica por medio de fuentes renovables. Esto logra ningún otro país en el mundo. Importante también, en plantas hidroeléctricas y eólicas bajo esquemas industriales no más se aplican por el impacto negativo a la biodiversidad del país. Más que 30% del país son protegidos. Hay muchos manglares, hay muchas áreas que están protegidos también de zonas húmedas. Un ejemplo también, Costa Rica tiene per cápita la cifra más alta de carros eléctricos de toda Latinoamérica y existen estrategias que apoyan esto: decarbonización, bioeconomía, economía circular y economía basada en hidrógeno. Además de esto, que ya mencionó que casi 100% de la electricidad son de energías renovables, hay un superávit de energía producido anualmente de 150%. Por eso hay mucha energía que se produce y que simplemente se pierde porque no se puede exportar. Y acá también vamos a entrar a ciertas tecnologías que pueden ser interesantes. Otra vez aquí rápido, que tenemos hidroeléctrica, sí, pero no más se amplia solo en proyectos pequeños. Geotermia, muy interesante, voy a mencionar después. Energía solar está empezando apenas. Energía eólica, hay algunos parques, pero por el impacto ecológico no más se utilizan y el uso de biogás, biomasa es relativamente bajo. Por eso acá también hay buenas posibilidades. importante es ahora, uno dice, ok, PC producen más que suficiente, ¿por qué tendría que ir acá? Porque por el momento esto fue principalmente producido por empresas monopolistas. Este monopolio ya se rompió en una cierta forma para el autoconsumo. Empresas, igual que personas privadas, pueden producir su electricidad y pueden vender el superávit. Lo único que no es hasta el momento permitido, pero que se va a permitir probablemente el próximo año, es la entrada de empresas comerciales de producción de energía siempre bajo de la premisa renovable. Por eso estamos en el proceso de descentralización y acá hay mucho que hacer. Hay que modernizar las redes, hay que modernizar también la tecnología en las casas. Existe bastante mercado para soluciones individuales, porque si yo produzco por fuentes naturales energía sostenible, eso es un poco más caro. Y acá si uno autoproduce, por eso se transforma en un prosumer, al final hay buenas posibilidades de ahorro de gastos y de costos para las empresas y las personas privadas. No solo vamos a hablar del tema de energía eléctrica, ahorita voy a regresar un poco más en algunos detalles a la energía eléctrica, sino también del tema de agua. Este evento se llama GreenTech, no se llama Green Energy. Por eso también es importante mencionar este tema. En Costa Rica, el acceso al agua potable es un derecho constitucional para toda la población. Hay casi 300 leyes relacionadas con agua. 98% tienen conexión a agua potable por medio de un tubo que llega a la casa. Los otros 2.2% reciben agua por cisternas, por vehículos. 86.5% del agua en alguna manera es tratada de las aguas negras, pero esto no significa que todo está bien. Solo 22% de la población tienen un acceso o tienen hogares conectados directamente a tuberías de aguas negras. Eso es relativamente bajo, pero el otro va por tanques de aguas negras y acá hay que trabajar. Acá uno puede también encontrar un buen mercado para plantas naturales de aguas, para plantas pequeñas. Al final, igual vamos a hablar o estamos hablando de la descentralización, porque en Costa Rica, como unos 60% de los 5.2 millones de habitantes viven en el área metropolitana, pero las otras personas también necesitan tratar su agua, en específico en el área costera, porque no tiene tanto sentido simplemente dejar este agua fluir al mar. Y acá hay que trabajar. Aquí se menciona otra vez la baja cobertura en el tema del tratamiento de agua y la gran diferencia en este aspecto entre los áreas urbanos y los áreas rurales. Regresando a la energía, yo menciono que geotermia es bastante interesante. Sí, es geotermia obviamente de alta entalpía en el volcán, como en todos los países de la cordillera volcánica. Aquí en Latinoamérica tiene mucho potencial. Costa Rica es, después de los Estados Unidos y México, la número 3 en el uso de esta energía. Esta energía eléctrica producida por alta entalpía cubre 25% del consumo básico del país y es una energía bastante barata. Ahora probablemente van a decir así, pero no estamos aquí para construir una planta geotérmica de alta entalpía, eso es cierto, pero también hay muchas posibilidades para plantas de geotermia de baja entalpía. Lo interesante aquí es que es bastante superficial. Uno encuentra las temperaturas necesarias entre, ya sabemos, 50 y 400 metros en muchas áreas del país. El tiempo de amortización por causa de los altos precios de energía es más o menos 6 años, por eso es relativamente poco. En este contexto, quiero también anunciar que pronto en febrero la AHK Costa Rica va a hacer un evento al respecto del uso de energía de geotermia de baja entalpía para la producción mixta de electricidad y de vapor, y con eso con conversión también de frío, porque va a haber un proyecto piloto con la iniciativa de explotación de energía del Ministerio de Economía y Energía alemana, y en febrero va a llegar este consorcio que estamos formando de empresas alemanas para aquí, para Costa Rica, y ojalá que pronto va a haber los primeros proyectos acá realizados. Ahora, tema del día, tema de la hora, hidrógeno. Hidrógeno obviamente es un tema que hay que tocar si uno habla de temas verdes. Costa Rica es número 1 en Centroamérica, número 2 en Latinoamérica. Costa Rica pertenece desde la COP26, cuando fue fundado, a la Alianza Latinoamericana de Hidrógeno Verde. Costa Rica produce hidrógeno verde desde el año 2007, por eso casi 15 años. Aquí en el país hay algunos buses, hay algunos busetas para turismo, y hay vehículos, algunos, muy pocos, pero algunos vehículos privados o individuales propulsados por hidrógeno y celdas de combustible. Costa Rica en la COP también fue presentado entre los proyectos finalistas de la Mama Facility, acá con el proyecto Costa Rica Green Hydrogen. Acá está incluido la GIZ, pero también nosotros como AHK. Igual vamos a tener probablemente el próximo año un viaje de exploración de mercado costarricense en el marco del H2AP del Ministerio de Energía y Economía de Alemania. Acá en pronto vamos a también comentar un poco más. Y Costa Rica también está impulsando la producción de combustibles sintéticos en cooperación con universidades alemanas. Yo mencioné que hay un gran superávit de electricidad y eso hay que aprovechar. También ya en la respectiva comisión de la Asamblea Legislativa fue aprobado la propuesta de ley de transformación de Costa Rica en una economía basada en hidrógeno verde, y esta ley entra al Parlamento la próxima semana y esperamos que en los próximos 4 semanas va a ser aprobado. De esta manera, es relativamente claro que Costa Rica acá es un lugar también para hidrógeno verde. No se puede hablar de Costa Rica sin hablar del turismo, porque si uno está aquí y invierte aquí, también probablemente quiere disfrutar del país. Acá Costa Rica es uno de los líderes en Latinoamérica, el líder en Centroamérica, tiene crecimiento antes de COVID bastante bueno, ya recuperamos la cifra de turismo de pre-COVID, por eso ya estamos otra vez en el mismo nivel. Hay obviamente, como en todo, aquí un enfoque en sostenibilidad, en turismo individual, pero eso también conlleva un nivel de precios relativamente alto o mediano. Tiene una excelente infraestructura y es un destino para inversiones en turismo muy importante. Y esto también para empresas que quieren trabajar en Costa Rica, que quieren vender tecnología verde. Es importante porque donde tengo un sector de turismo que se basa en realidad en la sostenibilidad y la ecoamigabilidad, hay claramente un cliente para comprar mis productos. Acá tienen algunas impresiones. Como es un país pequeño, tenemos playas del Pacífico, playas del Caribe, volcanes hasta casi 4.000 metros y de todo un poco. Y eso es lo bonito en este país. Aquí, para concluir, les agradezco por su tiempo. En el QR abajo pueden llegar a más informaciones al respecto de los estudios de mercado que se realizaron en los últimos años. Acá tenemos energías renovables y eficiencia energética en infraestructura de turismo, en edificios de oficinas, de producción de central y energías renovables. Tenemos este proyecto que mencionó del uso de geotermia de baja entalpía superficial, y para el próximo año ya también hay algo en la pipeline, que son 2 proyectos. Primero, un tema de hidrógeno que estamos esperando la aprobación, y también un tema de soluciones descentralizadas de producción y de almacenamiento de energía. También tienen arriba el link para nuestra página. Y con esto, yo creo que bien en tiempo termino mi presentación, porque yo he visto también que quizás hay algunas preguntas en el chat y esto me gustaría responder ahora. Vamos a ver. ¿Micrófono?
Now you should hear me. Thank you so much, Mr. Dr. Schauer, for this nice introduction and for being so punctual to end your presentation. To me, it was really interesting to see that actually Costa Rica, the energy comes actually from renewable, so totally from renewable sources. And it's good to see that Costa Rica in the Caribbean is the country that has this wonderful information. You also mentioned in your presentation that hydrogen is a coming market in Costa Rica, and that you are going to expect some other projects about hydrogen. So it was really, really interesting. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think we don't have any question in the chat right now. You also are available for any kind of open questions. Viewers and our attendees can contact you. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us. See you next time. Have a nice day to Costa Rica.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Now I'm really happy to move to our next speaker from Mexico. I welcome on stage Mr. Garret Maack. He's consultant environment and sustainability at the Chamber in Mexico. And also I welcome on stage his colleague Pablo Camacho, also from the Chamber in Mexico. Hi to you, it's nice to see you. We are looking forward to hearing more about Mexico.
Hi, Marta. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, we are going to talk about the energy market in Mexico, and we are going to present in Spanish, actually. So, yeah, I will start then. Bueno, mi nombre es Garret Maack, soy asesor en temas de sustentabilidad. Hoy también conmigo está mi colega Pablo Camacho, asesor en eficiencia energética y recursos naturales. Y bueno, vamos a empezar con unas informaciones generales sobre la distribución energética en México. Bueno, en México actualmente hay una variedad de fuentes para la generación de energía que van desde los combustibles fósiles como el carbón y el petróleo hasta, bueno, también incluyendo fuentes renovables como la eólica y la solar, que de hecho tiene un muy gran potencial en México, pero actualmente por las regulaciones e iniciativas que propone el gobierno que se ven un poco limitados, pero ahí vamos, de eso vamos a hablar en un rato. Bueno, en 2019, la mezcla de generación de la electricidad en México estaba dominada por el gas natural, el carbón y el petróleo, que al final representaban más del 70% de la generación total de la electricidad. La mezcla de la generación eléctrica en México está fuertemente orientada hacia el gas natural, con una contribución importante debido a que la disponibilidad del combustible a nivel nacional es muy económico y por eso también la participación es muy alta. Sin embargo, en cuanto, por ejemplo, a las hidroeléctricas, el gobierno actual está viendo el tema y también duplicó la producción este año. En la gráfica que hay ahí pueden ver la estimación del mercado de la energía térmica en cuanto a su capacidad y su producción de este año, o bueno, 2020 hasta 2030. Y bueno, como también sabemos que México fue uno de los primeros países del mundo en anunciar la eliminación de las centrales de carbón hasta el año 2030, desafortunadamente no se ve mucho esfuerzo por parte del país y actualmente tampoco se cuenta con una estrategia real o ninguna política de eliminación del carbón. Y por eso se espera que la capacidad energética de carbón en México solo va a disminuir marginalmente hasta el 2030 y se queda básicamente igual como ahora. Y también la energía térmica, que es la principal fuente de generación de energía en México del año pasado. También se espera que habrá tendencias similares para el año 2030. Siguiente, Pablo. Bueno, ¿y qué es lo que propone el gobierno actualmente y cuáles son las tendencias en México actualmente? México se comprometió a eliminar gradualmente la generación de energía de carbón para el 2030, como ya mencioné. Sin embargo, el nuevo gobierno que llegó al poder en el 2018 ha promovido más el uso de la generación de energía térmica. Y esto al final también tenía un gran efecto al sector renovable, que al final por eso tenía un crecimiento muy lento. Añadiendo a esto, en marzo de 2021, el gobierno mexicano aprobó un proyecto de ley de energía que al final favorece a las plantas generadoras, propiedad del gobierno, que funcionan principalmente con combustibles fósiles. Y con esta nueva ley, la electricidad se comprará primero a las centrales hidroeléctricas estatales y a las que funcionan con carbón y petróleo. Al final, ahí entonces, aún siendo que las plantas solares o eólicas tienen un precio más bajo, se comprará primero a las centrales estatales. Y ahora hace 2 meses el gobierno, en octubre de 2021, el presidente Andrés Manuel López Obrador envió una nueva iniciativa para reformar los artículos 25, 27 y 28 de la Constitución mexicana. ¿Qué significa esto? ¿Qué está proponiendo el nuevo gobierno? Sí, al final se puede resumir esto en 3 pilares esenciales que propone el gobierno. Por un lado, quieren empoderar a la Comisión Federal de Electricidad, que es la institución del gobierno de la electricidad, a través de diversas modificaciones. También quieren eliminar los órganos reguladores de energía que coordinan todo esto, es decir, quieren eliminar la Comisión Reguladora de Energía, la Comisión Nacional de Hidrocarburos y el Centro Nacional de Control de Energía. Y también quieren otorgar al gobierno mexicano el derecho exclusivo de explotación de litio. Aquí a la derecha en la gráfica es una gráfica del gobierno que supuestamente muestra los beneficios de la reforma en materia eléctrica, diciendo que al final, bueno, las empresas las empresas que antes pagaban un precio menor de electricidad ahora ya no tendrán ese derecho, y que también CFE va a tener el 54% de la producción de la electricidad, y lo que resta, el 46% de la electricidad, van a ser de entidades privadas. Sí, eso es lo que propone el gobierno. En la siguiente página, lo que podemos ver es qué es lo que realmente va a suceder con CFE, la Comisión Federal de Electricidad. Bueno, por un lado, va a ser un organismo administrativo descentralizado en lugar de una empresa productiva del Estado que se encargue de la transición energética en materia de electricidad. Quieren poner a la CFE exclusivamente a cargo del suministro y de una manera que las empresas privadas solo podrán generar el equivalente al 46% de la energía requerida. la cual al final también solo podrá ser vendida a la CFE a través de contratos de corto plazo. También proponen una eliminación de los permisos de autoabastecimiento o del autoabasto, y que al final el siguiente punto también es que la CFE no va a reconocer la generación excedente de los productores independientes. Esta reforma aún no ha sido aprobada y de hecho hay muchas instituciones que dicen que queda en contra de, por ejemplo, del tratado que tienen con Canadá y los Estados Unidos. Entonces, sí, aún hay mucho que ver con esta reforma, pero como no solo queremos hablar del negativo que existe en México, también queremos hablar de las oportunidades que existen realmente en México en el sector energético. Y ahí paso la palabra a mi colega Pablo para hablar. Se me olvidó esto. Aquí otra vez pueden ver la mezcla de electricidad por tecnología en México. Y como pueden ver, pues el ciclo combinado tiene un gran porcentaje. También, bueno, los renovables o las renovables solo cuentan con el 16% en el país. Los hidroeléctricas cuentan con alrededor del 14%. También hay un porcentaje considerable de la energía térmica y también del carbón. Y sí, ahora creo que sí es tu turno, Pablo.
Sí, gracias, Garret. Pues sí, como puede ver lo que dice mi compañero Garret, hemos disminuido nuestros avances en energías renovables. Estamos un poco limitados en el momento hasta saber qué decisión se va a tomar en estas modificaciones a la ley. Esto dice que no se pueden hacer todavía cosas, todavía hay potencial para energía en estos temas que se pueden ver, ¿no? Hay como estas dudas todavía de los cambios que podrían pasar o no, y aparte si sí suceden todavía nos aclaran muchas cosas de lo que, cómo se va a regular esta nueva forma, ¿no? Pero todavía tenemos gran potencial en eficiencia energética en los diferentes sectores, ¿no? Como tanto en industria como en el sector, en pequeñas, medianas y grandes empresas. Hemos notado que todavía tienen gran interés en aplicar estas medidas de eficiencia energética, consumir menos energía, ¿no? El interés por las empresas y todavía está en disminuir sus consumos. También en el nivel residencial notamos una fuerte tendencia a instalación de energía fotovoltaica y solar térmica, ¿no? Para el calentamiento de agua. Tenemos gran interés en certificarse y obtener certificados estandarizados en el uso, en la eficiencia energética e instalación de tecnologías a nivel residencial. Alcaldías han estado todavía en contacto y tienen gran interés en implementar medidas de movilidad, ¿no? Quieren atacar también sus zonas más vulnerables para poder, a pesar de estos nuevos cambios, pues seguir mejorando, ¿no? A nivel más pequeño. Se tiene un gran potencial en el almacenamiento de energía, ¿no? Para la industria privada. Y obviamente tenemos toda la parte de agua, ¿no? Que se sigue buscando tecnologías para tratamientos de agua, el cuidado del agua a nivel público y privado. También nosotros en la Camexa los invitamos a que estén al pendiente de lo que estamos organizando en la Chica de México, porque una vez que se sepa qué decisión se va a tomar, vamos a estar sacando varios eventos con lo que se debe hacer en esta nueva situación, si es que pasa o si no pasa, cómo enfrentarlo, ¿no?
Sí. También el hidrógeno verde en México tiene un enorme potencial y ahí la GIZ acaba de sacar un estudio acerca del hidrógeno verde con la situación actual, también las consecuencias que podría tener para la industria, también para el gobierno mexicano, cómo podrían aprovechar el hidrógeno verde. Yo recomiendo este estudio porque es muy interesante. Desafortunadamente, aún no, México no cuenta con una estrategia en cuanto al hidrógeno verde a nivel nacional. Sin embargo, nosotros ya vimos que muchos estados tienen un gran interés en invertir en el hidrógeno verde y en conseguir proyectos en el hidrógeno verde. Entonces, ahí sí nosotros también vemos un muy gran potencial. Y les recomiendo a todos este estudio. Lo pueden encontrar en la página de la GIZ México. Y bueno, hablando de lo que nosotros en la Camexa hacemos para promover la energía y la sustentabilidad en México, bueno, al final nosotros nos vemos como una plataforma bilateral y el punto de contacto para empresas alemanas, también para ser un centro de información. La Cámara se estableció en 1929, entonces ya llevamos bastante tiempo en México y también contamos actualmente con alrededor de 800 empresas alemanas y mexicanas. Nosotros tenemos dos oficinas, hay una en la Ciudad de México y otra en Querétaro, y también contamos con representaciones en Puebla, Monterrey y Guadalajara para cubrir todo el país. Y al final, como todas las cámaras, somos la representación oficial de las empresas alemanas por parte o en representación del gobierno alemán. Al final, en México actualmente hay alrededor de 2,000 empresas de Alemania, lo que consecuentemente está creando 150,000 empleos de las empresas alemanas que están trabajando o que están en México. El 60% aproximadamente se dedica a la importación o a la distribución, o son empresas de servicios. Y el 40% se dedica a la manufactura, como por ejemplo la industria automotriz en México es muy fuerte, también por parte de las empresas alemanas. ¿Sigue? Bueno, y nosotros también tenemos una área que se llama Camexa Plus Sustentabilidad, o Camexa, bueno, en inglés es Camexa Sustainability, en español es Camexa Sustentabilidad. Y nosotros ahí nos vemos como una plataforma que crea los puentes entre Alemania y México para promover las buenas prácticas de Alemania y para llevarlas a México. Y también queremos lograr eso a través de los cursos que nosotros ofrecemos y los estándares de competencias. Al final, nosotros ahí queremos ser una cámara líder en los temas de la sustentabilidad y la eficiencia energética, que apoya tanto al sector privado como al sector público para subir la competitividad que tiene México en el mundo. Y obviamente también nosotros queremos seguir estableciendo contactos con las agencias, con el gobierno y las asociaciones que se dedican a este tema en México. Sí. ¿Y cómo hacemos esto? Bueno, como todas las cámaras, por un lado, nosotros ahí organizamos delegaciones en los temas de la energía y eficiencia energética. Hemos tenido en el año pasado, por ejemplo, delegaciones en temas de la eficiencia energética en la industria. El próximo año vamos a tener una delegación en la eficiencia energética en la edificación. También tuvimos una delegación el año pasado en plantas de tratamiento. Y sí, esto es una manera como promovemos la eficiencia energética y la sustentabilidad en México. Otra manera que tenemos es... Sí, Pablo, si quieres.
Sí, pues esta es otra manera que tenemos, se llaman redes de aprendizaje en eficiencia energética y sistemas de gestión de la energía, donde juntamos a, pueden ser empresas en el mismo sector, pero que no se compitan entre sí, donde en conjunto van implementando sistemas de gestión y van compartiendo experiencias y métodos para lograr implementar un sistema de gestión en su empresa, ¿no? También hemos tenido uno muy exitoso con la empresa Bosch, donde fue en conjunto con en un grupo de sus mismas empresas, implementaron este sistema de gestión basado en la ISO 50001, ¿no? Aquí los invitamos, si quieren tener una información más completa, y pueden ver la página, donde encontrarán a detalle cómo participar en una de ellas, o bien nos pueden también contactar, ¿no? Aquí lo que mencionaba mi compañero Garret, nosotros tenemos un centro de capacitación en sustentabilidad, que tenemos varios cursos más técnicos o específicos, como los que pueden ver aquí en pantalla, que los pueden ver en nuestra página de internet, sus temarios, ¿no? Contamos con un diplomado en eficiencia energética basado en la ISO 50001, donde tiene una duración de 260 horas, repartidas en 6 meses, donde el alumno va a poder conocer cómo implementar un sistema de gestión de energía y cómo implementar medidas de eficiencia energética en diferentes áreas de la industria, ¿no? Esta página igual las pueden ver, conocer este diplomado que está hecho en Alemania y adaptado al mercado mexicano. También tenemos, que aquí no aparece, un nuevo curso que es como el gestión de la sustentabilidad en la industria, donde apoyamos al alumno a cómo implementar, cómo hacer más sustentable la compañía. Garret, bueno, aquí les dejamos nuestros contactos. Cualquier información que quieran nos pueden escribir a los dos, y los invitamos a estar al pendiente de la Camexa para estos nuevos cambios. Estaremos haciendo webinars y todo para cómo asesorar a la industria en estos cambios que podrían pasar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maack and Mr. Camacho, for this really nice introduction, for introducing us into Mexico. Let me just remind every attendees and every viewer that you are an exhibitor as well at the ExpoVirtual GreenTech. They can visit your pavilion and your stand if they have any kind of question as well. The link where our our attendees can join the ExpoVirtual GreenTech is www.expovirtual-greentech.com, and there you are at the pavilion for following up your presentation. We actually received a question for you that I will now read it loud. The question is, which kind of opportunities are there in the commercial sector in Mexico?
Pues, bueno, voy a responder en español. I will answer in Spanish. So,
yeah.
Bueno, viendo el tema del sector comercial, por un lado, creo que en cuanto a la eficiencia energética, hay un gran potencial, y más en pymes, en pequeñas y medianas empresas, ya que ahí aún hay mucho trabajo por hacer. Nosotros, de hecho, ahí tuvimos un curso o una capacitación con la GIZ, donde invitamos a alrededor de 120 empresas, o pymes más bien, que querían implementar medidas de eficiencia energética y aprender sobre este tema, ¿no? En sí yo veo esto muy relevante, ya que pues la estructura del mercado comercial en México es que la gran mayoría son al final pymes. Entonces ahí veo un fuerte punto donde hay un gran potencial de implementar estas medidas en México. También en cuanto al, digamos, sector comercial o ampliando un poco en cuanto al tratamiento de agua y la eficiencia energética ahí y la eficiencia del tratamiento del agua también creo que ahí hay un gran potencial, sea en hospitales, sea en edificios, ya que en México sí están buscando esto. Sin embargo, ahí siempre hay que ver el tema de la financiación, ya que esto es un tema que creo que en toda Latinoamérica es un tema que es muy complicado. Entonces ahí de pronto uno debería tener una propuesta de cómo poder financiar esto. Pero yo creo que estos son dos medidas que para el sector comercial podrían ser muy importantes y que ahí sí hay una gran oportunidad.
Thank you so much for your answer, Mr. Maack. Well, just let's say what should be the main focus for companies, let's say coming from Germany, but also coming from Latin America, if they want to improve energy efficiency and reduce the demand?
You're talking about energy efficiency from the company side, from the Mexican companies, if they need to, or if they want the product, or which products they are demanding for, or
exactly which kind of technologies they are searching for example, and where do you see the lack of technologies that you that the companies in Mexico are searching for?
Well, pues en sí creo que hay muchos sectores como nosotros. Ahí tuvimos el sector, aunque tenemos una delegación, por ejemplo, en el sector de la eficiencia energética en la edificación. En los edificios, por ejemplo, hay potencial, sea hasta empezando con el monitoreo ahí del consumo de tu energía, hasta sí, paneles solares en sí para reducir el consumo, luces, por ejemplo, iluminación, en este caso aire acondicionado, como México también sí se ve muy afectado por el cambio climático. Entonces en las regiones del Caribe, por ejemplo, y también en el norte, habrá un incremento en el uso de aire acondicionado. Pero entonces ahí también en cuanto a la refrigeración, ¿no? También, por ejemplo, como ¿cómo se llama? Se me olvidó la palabra. Como en tu nevera o ahí, como también esto tiene un gran consumo en estas regiones, entonces, para refrigerar tus productos, ahí también hay un gran potencial. En el sector industrial hay los procesos industriales donde también podrías usar el uso del calor, por ejemplo, que se podría usar de manera energética. Sí, hay muchos sectores ahí, también en los hoteles, para disminuir el consumo energético allá. O sea, en sí, en México hay mucho potencial ahí y sí, también lo están sí, demandando. Y por parte de la nueva iniciativa, este sector de la eficiencia energética no se ve tan afectado de lo que parece actualmente. Entonces, sí, las medidas de la eficiencia energética sí, en mi opinión, sí tienen un potencial en México.
Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting to hear from you. Which kind of technologies are have the potential in your country, in Mexico? And talking about green technologies, what would you say where there's potential for market entries for companies coming from another country, from Germany, for example, in the field of green tech?
Pues actualmente, bueno, por la reforma energética que proponen es para o sea, para la inversión privada, y de hecho hay muchas empresas que sí tienen muchas preocupaciones por sus inversiones en México, ya que, como dijimos o como mencionamos, de que el gobierno quisiera que apenas el 46% de la energía o de la electricidad proviene del sector privado, ¿no? Entonces, ahí, al final, si ellos pueden decidir de cuáles de los proyectos se van a hacer y cuáles no se van a hacer, por ejemplo, plantas eólicas o plantas solares, en sí tienen un muy buen potencial en México, pero pues el marco regulatorio actualmente lo hace un poco difícil para implementar esto. Entonces también hay muchas empresas alemanas en este sector, por lo menos, que pues lo piensan 3 veces por si van a invertir en este sector en México. No sé, Pablo, si tú quieres agregar algo ahí.
Sí, o sea, a nivel industrial sí se cuenta con el interés de las empresas en mejorar su tecnología que sea más amigable con el medio ambiente. Cuando quieren adquirir equipos, sí buscan que tengan estos estándares de eficiencia energética, sean amigables con el medio ambiente. Siempre está ese detalle de acompañarlos con este financiamiento. Es un reto también en México, ¿no? Que imagino que pasen en muchos lugares. Es el reto del financiamiento y cómo poder hacer más accesible esta inversión, ¿no? Pero sí hay un fuerte sector donde más siempre hay, el consumo siempre es en sistemas de HVAC, sistemas de enfriamiento. También están interesados la grande industria en sistemas de cogeneración, microcogeneración a base de gas natural, ¿no? Siempre buscan, aunque siempre sí están buscando estos gases menos, que impacten menos al medio ambiente y también con costos más bajos, ¿no? Entonces, no sé, con eso, ¿no? Sí hay un gran interés, ¿no? Por parte de la industria. Y ahora creciendo más también hacia las pequeñas y medianas empresas, ¿no? Que también ahora se están interesando en implementar estas medidas, no solo ya las grandes.
Perfect. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us, for joining the ExpoVirtual GreenTech today. As I said before, you are exhibitor as well in the Global Hub. Visitors can find you for some more opening questions, for interesting discussion about Mexico. Thank you so much once again, and see you next time. Greetings from Germany.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marta.
And now, dear visitors, we will have a short break of 5 minutes. I hope to see you back with me in a couple of minutes, and just take a cup of coffee, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are back from our short break. We will now continue our country presentations with another interesting presentation coming from Honduras. I welcome on stage Mrs. Dara Erazo. I see her here virtually. Thank you so much, Mrs. Erazo, for being with us today. You are director of the German Chamber in Honduras, and you will now introduce us into your country. Feel free to start.
Thank you very much, Marta. Very nice to meet you virtually as well. And hello to every participant here in this presentation. I had initially considered having my presentation in Spanish, but since I've already had the resources in English, I've opted to do this in English this time. So just give me a second so I can share my presentation with you. I'm definitely not an expert in the energy sector. However, as a chamber here, we have excellent contacts to pretty much all industries in the country, which, that's not what I wanted to show you. This is what I want to show you. So I'm very happy to be able to give you some information regarding the current energy situation in Honduras. But let me just start by saying a little bit of some data about our country in general, which is actually, this is my country. I'm Honduran. I was raised here. So just so you have a better idea, Honduras is right in the middle of Central America, right? And we have a population of around 9.7, it depends on the estimate, but around 9 million people, give or take. And our area is not that large. However, you can see that we have access to the Caribbean Sea, well, the Atlantic Ocean, also the Pacific Ocean. So in terms of logistics, this is one of the most advantageous features that Honduras has to offer. And in the most recent years, there has been a lot of work being done in a road that connects basically all the way from the north to the south to the exit here in the Pacific Ocean and connects to El Salvador. And in addition to this, we are experiencing a pretty significant shift right now in the country, in that we have changed basically the airport in Tegucigalpa, the international airport in Tegucigalpa, to Comayagua, which is the city that you see here in the middle. And this in the hopes of opening up logistics considerably. Since Tegucigalpa is actually in kind of like in between mountains, the airport is not the most accessible, shall we say. So this we are hoping will be a big shift in terms of the capabilities in general of logistics, and also, as I mentioned before, the connection that exists between the north and the south of the country, and obviously allows the communication to El Salvador and Guatemala and Nicaragua subsequently. Our capital city is Tegucigalpa, and you can see this is where I am currently. The population in Tegucigalpa is around 1.2 million people. However, Honduras is the only country in Central America that also, in addition to the capital city, has another city that is considerably large. And you can see here San Pedro Sula right at the coast and near Puerto Cortes, which is where the largest, most important port here in Honduras is, and with a population of around 1.1 million people. In general, it makes sense, I think, for you to understand that the industry is mostly here to be found here at the north of the country, near the Atlantic coast, considering that the United States is our #1 trade partner. Our currency is the lempira, and currently the rate of exchange is around 24.11 lempiras to every US dollar. Obviously, the pandemic has hit us all pretty hard. So our gross domestic product definitely decreased this last year in around 9.5% are the estimates. However, that leaves us at a gross domestic product of 23.83 billion US dollars, that is. And to be a little bit more optimistic, we are expecting a 4.5% recovery rate in this year. However, numbers are up still still in the air, right? Another thing that I would like to mention about Honduras is that there have been quite big efforts in diversifying its exports. As maybe some of you know, Honduras is definitely an agrarian country. You know, bananas, tobacco, tropical fruits in general, palm oil, seafood, those are our main exports. However, there has been a growing industry, especially in textile industry, confection, everything that has to do with apparel. It's been growing, and there are pretty significant plans of growing this in the coming years. So definitely an effort of not being just a primary resource land, and it's in the early stages. In addition to this, I would like to mention that Honduras has a pretty young and growing population, which can be a disadvantage, but also an advantage. And you might hear that there are definitely lots of migrants that try to go to the United States and Honduras. That is the case. And however, there are also opportunities for this young population here in Honduras, especially since we have a pretty significant percentage of bilingual young people here. There's a really rapidly growing industry in customer service, offshoring here in Honduras. So that regarding our landscape in general as a country and economically, I would like to mention that Honduras is currently experiencing a really significant change in government. We, this last Sunday, had elections, and it was a massive turnout in comparison to other election years. And around 68% of all the votes went to the opposing candidate or the opposing party. And we are now celebrating, if you will, the first elected woman president ever in the country's history. It's definitely a left of center kind of politics that are behind this party, and we're optimistic, but also pretty careful in expecting what's going to happen in the coming years. So just so you have a little bit of a context of how this is currently working for us. So now about the electricity market. So regarding this structure, it can be said that there are basically two main state institutions that are responsible for its functioning. First of all is the Secretary of Energy. I think I have it here, yeah. It's the Secretary of Energy that is responsible for drawing up all the guidelines, all of the politics, right, behind or the norms, such regulations behind the functioning of the energy market. And next to this is the Regulatory Commission. And you can see here, this is the overarching entity that oversees this whole market. And obviously is the one responsible for issuing permits and regulating, enforcing regulations in general. And you can see here that there are 5 different actors. However, it is important for me to mention that the Honduran energy market is at the beginning stages of liberalization, which means that it wasn't until 2014 that a law was passed that essentially mandated the breaking up of the monopole. How do you say that in English? I don't know anymore. Yes, the state institution that was responsible for every single part of the energy or electricity. I'm talking about this in specifically electricity market, or vertically integrated company, right? So to separate the National Electricity Company that was previously responsible for every step of the energy or electricity generation and distribution has been a big challenge. And ever since 2014, there have been growing efforts in making this a reality. So in paper, you could say that all of these different actors here, generators, transmitters, distributing companies, commercializers, and large consumers are are in theory able to work with each other under the guise of the system operator, who is, well, which is responsible of dispatching everything in an orderly fashion. However, this is not yet a reality. It is an effort and it is the vision, and we hope that this will happen more rapidly coming up. However, breaking up this one state institution has definitely not been simple and is still underway. There has been a slew of different initiatives of auditing this company and helping the transition, but it isn't a reality. So just to be clear in this, about this topic specifically. However, the vision in the future is, like I mentioned, that generators, large consumers, commercializers, the distribution company, and the transmitters are all able to work freely with each other and competitively, right, in order for the market to have the lowest rates possible and the best quality of service. That's an ongoing process. In terms of energy consumption, Honduras, well, I'm talking about energy now and not just about electricity, but just to give you a little bit of a context, Honduras doesn't have a, how can I say this so diplomatically or politically correctly? There are a lot of poor people here in Honduras that don't have access to lots of resources as more privileged people like we do have, right? So that means that still to this day, the number one source of energy for Honduran households is actually the burning of firewood. And you can see that here. But this is used mainly for cooking. And in addition to this, transportation is also a pretty significant means, right? So this is where we mostly consume energy in the form of fossil fuels, right, for transportation. We don't have that much of a developed public transportation system here, so we're reliant on everybody's having their own cars to this day. However, there is a really large potential for renewable energies here in Honduras, and this has been an initiative that has been pushed considerably, and where there has been a lot of steps in the right direction. So, you know, coming back to this change in structure, there were different changes that I'm trying to move this around so I can see this better. Give me 1 second, because somehow this is in the way. Okay. One moment. Yes, so here, just going back to here, this is a more interesting graphic, right? Firewood is 36%, diesel and gasoline for transportation, as I mentioned, and then you see the rest here for electricity. Electricity, however, is currently generated actually at a pretty great rate or percentage in terms of energy, renewable energy. So this is something that is salvageable in comparison to what we're currently seeing for like daily cooking and stuff like that. And this is another graphic that speaks to how the nature of the energy sources are used, like how much of it is used residentially, for transport, for the industry, commercial, and then basically just a very small, almost insignificant part for agriculture. So you see, most of the electricity is used for in houses, right? So the government has a pretty clear goal, and this has been ongoing for the last years. The Secretary of Energy is actually a new institution that was created specifically for this. They are developing the policies. It's happening slowly, but it is happening, and there has been a lot of effort in the right direction, in my opinion, and also from what I've been able to gather from here in with our contacts and our member companies that are active in this sector. The government has a goal of, I'm going back to this later, yeah. The government has a clear goal of producing 80% of the total electricity consumption here in the country from renewable resources by 2038. And right now, we have also already reached the 60%, and it went from a 40% to a 60% in just over a decade. This is a number from 2019, but it continues to be around this percentage to this day. And as you can see here in this graphic, you'll see that from the renewable energies, right? Obviously excluding thermal fossil fuels here, that 13% of this, and well, this 26% of this is actually hydroelectric. So we are definitely dependent on the country's water resources, which can be a good and a bad thing, considering that most of the time we have pretty good water table. However, in the months where there's no rainfall, it is definitely a vulnerability that the country has. And most of the initiatives that have been happening recently, from moving away from hydroelectric power into, for instance, biomass, wind, or solar, have been private. So this is something to consider when you're trying to do projects here, I guess. Here's another example. Here's a better graphic that explains how it is divided. It's basically the same graphic here, but in a little bit of more of a graphic way, to see how much, what a percentage each different kind of energy source has. You see that 18% of the total installed capacity in the Honduran grid or energy grid is coming from solar, photovoltaic plants, 26% from hydroelectric, and you can see this division between run-of-the-river or plants or hydroelectric plants that are running on reservoirs. 8% of this is biomass, 8% is wind, and then these others, 1% is geothermal, and then we're talking here about petrol and coke and thermal energy, gasoline, like I mentioned before. 30%. This geothermal is actually something that I would like to highlight, because even though it is only 1% of the total installed capacity in the country, there is a great potential here in our countries for geothermal energy. The German government has been involved in developing projects here. Through the GIZ specifically, there is one plant called Geoplantanares, and we are hoping to see more of this in the upcoming years. But definitely glad to report that this 1% exists, that it is running, operating with no problems, and we are hoping to see this grow in the future. But it also depends a little bit on this new government situation, how much resources are going to be invested there. But I'm obviously trying to highlight the most positive aspects of this. I wanted to go to here. I'm flip-flopping around a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the electricity coverage first of all. And you'll see that a pretty significant part of the country does not have access to electricity. And this is where I would say is a big potential for small installations, for green technology, right? Which is why we're here. For green technology, for isolated systems that are not connected to the national grid system, that can supply energy to small communities that are currently underserved. And you see here, I mean, this you see, gracias a Dios, basically has absolutely no access to electricity. And that is due to the fact that this is pretty much tropical rainforest. Even cars don't get through here a lot. So for the smaller communities, I'm not talking about big photovoltaic plants. I'm talking about small systems, maybe wind and small photovoltaic systems, you know. You see, obviously, here there's no lack of electrification in Francisco Morazán, which is where the capital city is. There's no problems really with access to electrification for the most part. However, there are some pretty significant grid requirements, and Just so you know, yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just wanna kindly remind you that we are running out of your time for your presentation. It was it would be really nice if you could come to a conclusion. Thank you so much.
I was extending myself a little bit because I thought I had to cover the 20 minutes. I guess I lost track of time, definitely.
No worries.
Well, just to leave you with this, there are grid requirements that are pretty significant, like I mentioned. There's the installed capacity increased 134 megawatts in 2019. 77 of these were thermal power plants. And as long as we don't have large investments in transmission grids, the larger projects are not that realistic. So leaving you on that, on the potential for small installation. You see briefly, I suppose, maybe which technologies, this is the most interesting for you, maybe which technologies are in demand. So storage system, efficient air conditioning, low enthalpy geothermal energy, cooling with solar energy, and solar power power pumps. Let's just say these are the things that I would consider are the most important for German companies currently in Honduras. But I do apologize for overextending my time.
No worries. No worries.
For this, if you want this presentation, I will gladly put it, make it available for you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Dara, for introducing us into Honduras. I think this was really a nice conclusion, which kind of technologies and know-how is needed in your country. So if you want, you can, of course, also share with our attendees your contact details so that viewers and also interesting other companies can contact you. You are as well an exhibitor at the ExpoVirtual GreenTech, so people can contact you and find you also there. Thank you very much for being with us today, and see you next time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I hope it was informative.
Yeah, for sure. So now we are moving to the next speaker. I'm glad to welcome on stage Mr. Kai Henke. He's project manager at the German Chamber in Guatemala. Mr. Henke, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hi.
And welcome. I will share my screen. So I hope everybody can see the screen also in the presentation mode.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I will present today the energy market in Guatemala. First, I will tell a little bit about Guatemala in general, about the country. So with the country profile, followed up with the economic development, as well as the energy market in Guatemala, which will be the main part in it at the end. So first of all, Guatemala in general. Guatemala is the country with the most inhabitants in Central America, with 17.8 million inhabitants in total. The capital is Guatemala City, and the main language in Guatemala is Spanish, but there are also 22 Mayan languages still spoken and 2 local languages as well. The OECD country risk rating is a 4, which is for Latin American countries a quite good position. Guatemala is the largest economy in Central America with a GDP of $77.6 billion US in 2020, and had an overall GDP growth over the last years, which I will show you more in detail, which was quite positive. I took here the GDP of 2019 because it's more representing the GDP growth over the last years than 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. Also, the inflation is still in a healthy rate. It is with 4.54 in 2021 estimated and 3.21 in 2020. In a still good place. Doing business, Guatemala is ranked 96, and in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, it has right now the rank 10 in 2020, and also Euler Hermes is rating Guatemala with a B2 medium risk for enterprises. Here you can see the economic development. 2020 was the first year in more than 3 decades that Guatemala had a negative GDP growth. Not even in the world financial crisis 2008, 2009, Guatemala had a negative GDP development. Only in 2020 with a minus of 1.52. There, it can be said that Guatemala has one of the lowest negative GDP or the lowest problems in the COVID crisis of the Latin American and Caribbean countries. So in general, Guatemala has a really good growing economy. Now we're coming to the energy market. The energy market in Guatemala is one of the most important markets in general, beside of the textile industry. In 2020, the share of renewable energy was above 70%. Here you can see that it's mainly the hydropower sector, which is producing the renewable energy, followed by wind power, geothermal energy, solar, and biogas takes a really small part. I put biomass apart here because the production of biomass is mainly in the sugar industry, and most of the industry is using this electricity by themselves, and it's not going into the general grid. That's why I separated it here a bit. But Guatemala is in a really good way to increase the renewable energy production in the following years. I will come to this point a little bit later in detail. The development of the installed capacity didn't change much in the last 4 years or 5 years. It increased only a little bit. It is, like I said, mainly the hydropower. Here you can see that the installed capacity is quite higher than the effective capacity. There it is often has to do with the water power or also with the coal or natural gas or fuel production, because it's in many points not necessary to use the full potential or the full installed capacity in these areas. So that's why it is quite higher, the installed capacity, than the effective capacity which is used right now. Here you can see the development of the electricity demand. We will talk right now only until the fact of 2018, because afterwards I will go more into detail in the next section. It is really interesting how the electricity demand in Guatemala developed over the time and over the last years. Here, this is the electrification rate. Guatemala had 2018 electrification rate of 91.23%. I only picked out some of the lowest and some of the highest departments in Guatemala in case of the electrification rate. Alta Vera Paz has by far the lowest with 64.61%, the lowest electrification rate. These numbers are from 2018, but are the last official numbers due to the topic. Guatemala wants to improve this a lot. The capital, Guatemala City, with 99.15%, is nearly completely done with the electrification. But for the rest, it is quite difficult because Alta Vera Paz, for example, is a real rural area which has problems to get connected to the general grid. Therefore, Guatemala has the goal until 2027 to hire it completely on 98% or 97% electrification rate. And here you can see the different areas they want to focus on. They want a reduction of the use of firewood in the country. Right now, it is often that many families are still cooking with normal firewood. And this is a point where it can be improved a lot and where the demand can grow a lot. As well in the saving and efficiency use of energy, which was for a long time not a really important part in Guatemala, but also this is getting more important right now. The exploration and exploitation of the oil reserves is also getting more important, as well as the security of fuel supply at competitive prices. As well, Guatemala wants to become a little bit more independent in this sector and wants to get more independent of the fuel supply or the normal fossil fuels. Also, the security of electricity supply at competitive prices. Guatemala is there on a really good way. But there are still some difficulties to guarantee the electricity supply everywhere. and therefore Guatemala wants to focus more on decentralized solutions, especially for the rural areas. So now about the future potential and opportunities. Here, like I said, we will have a deeper look into the forecast of the electricity demand. Like I said, these numbers are actually from 2018, but by 2020 already, the electricity demand was above the expectations from the Ministry of Electricity and Mines in Guatemala. So right now in 2020 and 2021, the electricity demand is already above the shown part here. The reason for this is that the industry were growing much faster, and like I said before, the use of the firewood wasn't completely, they didn't took it completely into consideration in this part. So more people switched from using firewood to electricity. So there in this part, it were growing much faster than expected. At the end, it can be said that the electricity demand in Guatemala will be much higher, and therefore there are many possibilities for companies to enter the Guatemalan market. The different sectors I will come into in a minute. First of all, Guatemala's government had new plans from 2020, the Plan de Expansión Indicativo del Sistema de Generación y del Sistema de Transporte. And Guatemala put out the goal to obtain 80% of the energy until 2034 from renewable energies. Like we saw quite in the beginning, with above 70% of the energy supply from renewable energy, Guatemala is already quite close to it. Below you can see a table where Guatemala put out the goals they have and how many new plants they want to install until 2034, with a quite high potential. The main focus is still hydropower. They want to install 19 new power plants, as well as private or public, with an amount of with a potential of above 1,000 megawatt, followed by geothermal, solar, and wind energy, which are the three main focused areas in renewable energy after hydropower. By now, geothermal, solar, and wind is nearly not used in it. Following, we will see the potential of the different renewable energy sources, as well as I will give a short explanation to the decentralized energy supply, the energy storage, and the energy efficiency. So first of all, hydropower. Hydropower has right now installed capacity from more than 1,500 megawatt. Like I said before, it is the highest installed capacity, or is the main energy source in Guatemala. The estimated potential by the Ministerio de Energía y Minas is above 6,000 megawatts. So there is still a high unused potential. That's why the government of Guatemala want to higher the amount of plants in hydropower with 19 plants, and in total amount above from 1,000 megawatt. That would be around 40% of the expansions plan they have until 2034. In area of geothermal, it has right now only installed capacity from 49.2 megawatt in only 2 different plants at the moment. There are more plans for geothermal plant. 2 are right now in construction, which can be seen here. And one is, they already applied to construct it. They are right now from US companies who are building these plants, but Guatemala in general is really interested also to get the technologies from Germany, and is really open to new geothermal plants, because it is one of the most potential, with the highest potential source in Guatemala, like in the most Central American countries. So in the future, Guatemala is planning with 15 new plants with the potential of 356.5 megawatt. That are 13.31% of the expansions plan from the government. Also solar, especially in the south of Guatemala, has a really high potential for new power plants. Right now, there's only installed capacity from 92.5 megawatt, which is going directly into the electricity grid of Guatemala. By now, you can see more and more industries and also private houses which are installing solar panels on the roof because it has a really high potential. The potential is 5.3 kilowatt per hour per square meter a day in Guatemala as an estimate. So the chance to produce more energy and the potential and opportunities, especially for German solar companies and photovoltaic companies, is in Guatemala really high. There are more and more requests, which also we're getting as a chamber from companies or private people here in Guatemala for new solar panels for the roof, or to just, to use it in the industry. So there are right now only 9 new plants planned, but with a total potential of 310 megawatt, which is still a big part of the new expansions plans from the government from last year. The same we can see in the wind power area. The wind power is right now with the installed capacity from 92.5%, also a really small part of the general electricity supply. And it is an estimated potential from only global winds of 204 megawatt. But with this, it's only meant the global winds and the local wind potential is much higher, but there are no complete estimations or analysis about this. Like we can see here, especially in the southeast of Guatemala, the potential for wind energy is really high. And Guatemala wants to install 8 new plants with a total megawatt potential of 330 megawatts. As well, biomass. Like I said before, the capacity of biomass is mainly in the sugar industry, and it's not used for the, or mainly not used for the general grid and the general electricity supply. Still, Guatemala wants to build 3 new plants with a potential of 125 megawatt until 2034. But biomass is not the main focused area for Guatemala in this case. Now, finally, to the decentralized energy supply, energy storage, and energy efficiency. The decentralized energy supply is mainly for the rural areas in the free trade zone. But in general, Guatemala wants to focus more on the decentralized energy supply to have a supply without interruptions and to guarantee better supply for all areas. Therefore, also the energy storage is necessary and it's really important. There are different plans right now how to store energy. Also in the sector of green hydrogeno verde, Guatemala is right now investigating how this can be used. So green hydrogen, it is an important part, especially in the industry and also for the free trade zones, which are quite a lot in Guatemala. And many of the industries in the free trade zones, they need a constant energy supply without interruptions or without breakdowns. So therefore, the energy storage is really important. And by now, it's nearly not existing in Guatemala. So the chances for companies which are focusing or mainly in the decentralized energy supply and energy storage, the potential in Guatemala in the following years will grow a lot. As well in the energy efficiency. By now, energy efficiency is not really focused, not by the government and also not in the private sector. Also, when it's standing in the most of the plans for the future, energy efficiency is included in there, but by now it's not used a lot. But it's getting more and more important, especially for the industry. They want to save more energy. They need to be more efficient to be competitive with the other countries, especially with the neighbor in the north, Mexico. They need more energy efficiency to improve this area. I hope I could give a short and quick overview about the Guatemala in general and about the Guatemalan energy market. And thank you for your attention. For further questions, please contact us directly. My name is Henke, and it was a pleasure to present Guatemala. I'm not sure if in general, but I don't have sound right now from Mrs. Cavalli.
No, couldn't hear her either.
We also had some technical issue here in Germany. I'm so sorry. Now you should hear me. Thank you so much for your nice introduction in Guatemala, and also for being so punctual. I said for concluding your presentation as well. I really appreciate that. I said that this is the last chance actually to visit also your pavilion at the ExpoVirtual GreenTech, since today is the last day of the virtual trade fair. So I kindly invite you to visit the trade fair. Mrs. Henke will be there, and he's open for any other kind of questions that you may have. Thank you so much, Mr. Henke, for being with us today, and see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. And now we move to the next speaker. I already see on the virtual stage Mr. Janzen from El Salvador. He will introduce us into his country, El Salvador. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Janzen, the director of the German Chamber in El Salvador. And I will share my screen. Okay. You see it?
Yeah, we can see your presentation. Not,
excellent.
Yeah, not in the full screen. I think if you can change, yeah, right in the middle, you can change actually in full screen mode, where it says configuración de visualización. If I pronunciate it correctly, then you can turn into full mode.
All right. So did it change?
No, it didn't change, but yeah, you can start. I think it's okay. It's okay right there.
Okay, just the last try. Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Perfect.
Okay. So done. Thank you. Sorry for that. Okay, I already introduced myself and the German Chamber of Commerce in El Salvador. I will make a very brief overview, insight of the renewable energy market in El Salvador, and a little bit of related green technologies. And starting with a country introduction, most of us know El Salvador and the region located between the Americas, Salvador being the smallest country in the region, and but with 6.5 million inhabitants, it's also the most densely populated one. state and number of inhabitants can be compared to the German federal state of Hessen. And back to the region, it is neighboring Guatemala and Honduras, the former two speakers, and of course the Pacific Ocean. And the interesting fact I would like to highlight is it has a comparable low Gini index, which is measuring the income gap between the inhabitants, and so meaning it's quite comparable, quite equal country relating to the income. The few words to the economy. The graph on the right-hand side is the GDP in the last 20 years, was growing quite stable, but with two visible drops. The first one being the financial crisis in 2008, and the second one, of course, the pandemic crisis last year, or still going on. So the GDP fell down to $24 billion. Saying dollars, the economy is dollarized. So the US dollar is the official currency. Recently we also are the first country with a legal cryptocurrency, but there's not too much information yet about that development. So, but definitely a very interesting movement of the government. The similar as many countries in the region, El Salvador has a number of free trade agreements, free trade zones, and of course also the free trade agreements with the European states, very important, North America, also a couple of South American states, of course the Central American region, and also some Asian states. The GDP before the pandemic were around $27 billion. I already mentioned the drop last year. Right now, in November or October 2021, the data is from October, we see the strong rebounding effect. In this graph on the right-hand side, it's related to imports, but it looks quite the same for exports and other data. So after the strong loss last year of around at about like 8% of GDP, the economy is recovering strong and fast. And the latest forecast, we're seeing the economy, the GDP, by around 9% growth. So we hope, of course, that this will continue, and many sectors also combine the growth after the pandemic situation with green technology, with green recovery. It's a term which is already used quite often and gaining popularity. And so I would also like to continue with the renewable energy in El Salvador, which had a very important position in the country regarding foreign investment, infrastructure investments in the last couple of years. I like this. This is another map of the country. I like the display because with the dots representing the renewable and fossil power plants above 10 megawatts, and the position of the plants shows quite well the geography of the country and also the potential. The green dots are representing the geothermal power plants, which are along, of course, the volcanic range from from east to west, right in the middle of the country. the hydropower plants are close to the Honduran border, along the Rio Lampa, which is supplying the power plants with water, and most of the industry scale photovoltaic PV power plants, the solar power plants, are along the coast because of climatic but also geographic reasons, which is a quite flat coastal stripe, while most of the country is with mountains. And also the white points are representing the fossil fuel power plants, which are around the demand, of course. So we see it's in the center of the country, around the capital, where also on all of the free trade zones, zones are located, I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, there's also the first wind development, which went into operation this year on the end of 2020, close to Guatemala. And right now is being built the first liquid natural gas power plant at the harbor of Acapulco, which will also, of course, have a big impact on the electricity system and the whole energy system of the country. I will continue with the development of renewable energies in the last 20 years. El Salvador is a long tradition of using renewable energy, same as the whole region. Hydropower has a big share of the electricity system, and also since decades, geothermal energy. El Salvador actually was, from a long time, the country with the highest share of geothermal energy in the world, and is still it's a very high share of around 25% of generation. In this graph, you see the capacity. In the last 15 years, we saw a strong introduction of biomass from sugarcane, which is also very important for the baseload supply. Biomass, because of the season, is the biomass plants are supplying electricity into the grid more or less from December till May, while the hydropower power plants have the strongest months from June, July on till November, December. So it's quite a good fit. And but I would like to highlight here, just in the last 4 or 5 years, there was a very strong development of solar PV, more than 400 megawatt installed capacity in just 5 years. And on the top of the graph, there's also the new wind project, which is at 50 megawatts. And so the diversification of the electricity grid is ongoing and very important for the electricity, but also the economic of El Salvador. At the end, I'll just mention that the fossil fuels are imported. There are no natural resources here, so it's also quite high costs for the economy. The development we have seen is also thanks to the favorable renewable energy policy. There, for example, and not mentioning all, but exemptions for the import of parts and exemption from taxes and duties from parts and plants of renewable energy, free access by law to the net power grid. Also, at the spot market, there's a preferential dispatch of electricity from clean sources. Another tool the government used for supporting renewable energy were PPAs and so on and so on. So there's a very favorable regulation frame. And there was also the last 7 years considerable amount, a substantial amount of investment, foreign investment in renewable energy, being the most in photovoltaics, but also geothermal, wind, biomass. This year, so far,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Janzen, for interrupt you. I would kindly ask you to come to a conclusion. We are running out of time, unfortunately.
All right.
Thank you.
So concluding, the Consejo Nacional de Energía, the National Energy Council, has developed the energy strategy for 2020-2050, which includes all these new technologies as electric mobility, green hydrogen, and also waste to energy, CO2 sequestration. So there's a lot going on, and we as the German Chamber also would very like to offer our support for everyone interested in the sector. Also wastewater treatment plants, and of course just giving a glimpse of eco-friendly buildings, which just a couple of years ago were almost non-existent, but just in the last 4 or 5 years there were more than 30 buildings certificated for LEED. So everything is in a very dynamic movement to green technologies, and well, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention, and yeah, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Janzen, for your presentation about your country, El Salvador. Here, our viewers can see as well your contact details. If they have any question, they can directly contact you. We haven't received so far any question. And you touch upon the potential for market entries in your country. So I think that that was enough for the viewers. Thank you very much for being with us today, and see you next time.
It's a pleasure.
Now we are moving to our final presentation today. I'm so glad to welcome on stage Mrs. Vera Franken, from a head of foreign trade, the International at the German Chamber in Bolivia. Thank you so much, Mrs. Franken, also for your flexibility. Your presentation was actually planned for the session yesterday, but we were running out of time, so you were so flexible to present today. Thank you so much once again, and we are looking forward to hearing more about Bolivia.
Thank you very much, Marta, and thank you everyone at energiewaechter for this slot to present as well information about our country. I will try to share my presentation. So just let me know if you can see it. Okay. Does that know if you can see it in a full screen mode?
Yeah, we can see it in a presentation mode.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, a little bit about Bolivia at first glance. We are a very small country in South America. We're in the heart of South America, and we don't have any access to the oceans as well as Paraguay. So all of our exports go through Peru and Chile, the most part, and part as well to Brazil. As we have around almost 12 million inhabitants, and most of our exports are actually raw materials. Bolivia is very well endowed with raw materials such as natural gas, all of the precious metals, and lithium as well in the future. And we have a fixed exchange rate actually in Bolivia to the US dollar, which $1 US is 6.96 Bolivianos. And that's fixed. With all other currencies, it's a fluctuating exchange rate. So as you can see here in the graph, Bolivia had very, very stable growth rates since 2006, we have been around 4%. Of course, in 2020 with the pandemic, we had a negative growth, but it was actually not as negative as other countries in Latin America. And now we are again at 4%. And for next year, it's also expected around 3 to 4%. So I'll just talk a little bit about the opportunities for GreenTech in Bolivia. So we have around 4 specific sectors where there would be a need for green technologies. The first one, of course, is the energy sector. Not only energy generation, but also the distribution and consumption are very key here. The water sector needs sustainable management of waters. We are especially hit by climate, we will be very hit by climate change in the future, and water is very, very essential here. Also how we treat water there is no system in Bolivia on how to treat residual waters. Then in the building sector, we had a building boom around 5 years ago, and we still see, even though it's declining, we still see a building boom, and it would be very crucial to invest here as well and look a bit more on more sustainable ways of building. And the industrial sector is actually a key sector for the government to invest into, and they are very interested in making plans to invest more big in everything that is more eco-friendly production and more efficient and automated production. So being energy the most important sector maybe for investments in Bolivia in GreenTech, I show here 3 pies that summarize basically the energy sector. The energy consumption, there you can see how the different sources are located, and electricity generation, which is basically where we have a lot of, like 35% come from renewable energies, and it's planned to be expanded a lot more until 2030, where should reach around 80%. However, we can see that electricity is only 10% of energy consumption as a whole. So the impact of having a very clean energy matrix is electricity generation matrix is not as high as one could think. Plus, if we can break it down to the sectors, it's very clear that transport is the most energy intensive sector, and especially consuming energy that is not renewable. So here, just to show what the energy framework in Bolivia looks like, it's very, very complicated, but in the end, it's all centralized in the Ministry of Hydrocarbon and Energy. So we can see that we have a lot of different vice ministries and sector institutions everywhere. And it's highly complex, and it's just to show that in Bolivia, it would be very, very difficult not to work together with the government in this sector, because everything is kind of centralized in the public sector. And here are some objectives for 2030, according to the updated national determined contributions document that Bolivia has presented this year at the COP in Glasgow. And here we can see that one priority is obviously the electricity sector, because here it's so much easier to make to include clean energy sources. So they want to have 100% access to electricity. Right now, we have around 94% in Bolivia. They want to increase distributed energy, and they want to focus as well on including the isolated systems that exist in Bolivia to the national grids, and they want to expand the national grid to the entire country. But they also want to highlight isolated systems, especially in areas where it's more difficult to reach. And they, as I mentioned before, 79% of entire energy should come from alternative sources. But there it is not clear if that is only specific for the electricity sector or the entire energy sector. And another important thing here is to say that they want to also invest in electric vehicles, which would be very important in the transport sectors. We have seen the transport sector is responsible for the more than 50% of energy consumption in Bolivia. So what do we do as the German Bolivian Chamber of Commerce and Industry? We actually, as well as in any other German chamber, and as I think my colleagues have also shown these, we work with our own members and we provide services for any other company that is interested in knowing more about Bolivia and Germany. And we do officially represent Germany in Bolivia. A little history: we are 65 years old, so it's not we're not as old as other chambers in Latin America. However, we already have 3 offices in Bolivia. The one in Santa Cruz, which is the industry hub in Bolivia, in La Paz, first where the government is located, and in Cochabamba, which is also very important for the economy. So in the three biggest cities, we have offices. What do we do? First, we do offer all of the same services as the other chambers, but we also have an important department, which is cooperation and projects. And here we try to be more innovative. We try to have different projects, which we highlight here. For example, prevention violence against women and e-learning projects, which are very important. Right now we have launched since last year important e-learning projects that are supposed for energy efficiency, and the other one that we have is in sustainable finance. So they focus a bit more on green technologies, and especially here we have it. Our e-learning in sustainable finance is for in first line for the finance sector in Bolivia. Here we worked closely together with the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. They are actually providing the course and the certification as well. And together with them, we have developed a specific course for Bolivia and in Spanish, and we plan this year and the coming year to expand it to other countries in South America and Latin America to provide the same course. Of course, everything should be country related, so every country can actually adapt the course so that we have local content in there as well, which is very important in these cases. And we have included a lot of different examples from German green technology providers, because the whole idea is to show what's actually out there and provide the examples that already exist. And we hope also there we can get a lot of inspiration for other technology providers and for other clients in Bolivia that might be interested in this whole area. So that was my very fast presentation, not very long. So since we're the last one today as well, I don't know if you have any questions. I have placed there my email address, so feel free to contact me if you have any further questions about Bolivia or the programs that we're developing right now.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Franken, for your nice presentation, for introducing us into your market, Bolivia. And I would like only to just ask you one question. I was wondering whether do you expect, or in which kind of field are you expecting the market to grow in the near future? You said during the presentation that energy efficiency is the focus in Bolivia, right? And where do you expect the market to grow?
Bolivia has been growing for the last years. There's a lot of, there has been a redistribution of income since around 10 years ago. So we have a lot of extreme poverty reduction. So every that is actually getting more income will be consuming more. And that is one key concern as well from the government. So they want to expand, especially the electricity grid. They have plans for power plants of more than 1,000 megawatts. And they also want to invest in wind and solar, especially for electricity. And they think that they will need it not only because our population is growing, but also because of the households that will be demanding more because of income increase as well. Mm. So that is one positive thing about the Bolivia's economy, that we have more a growing middle class, so to say, and a reduction of poverty. And another thing is that a lot of the people are migrating from rural areas to the cities, so there will be a lot more demand for energy. So they were also thinking about energy efficiency, because it's not only talking about expanding them, how they will provide electricity, but also how they will consume in the future. So that is very key. If you think that your demand will be growing, you cannot only, because there will be a limit of how much you can expand your electricity there. It needs to be sort of accompanied by all of your electricity or energy efficiency programs as well.
Thank you so much for your answer. It was really, now with your answer, a nice conclusion, I would say. Thank you so much once again for being our last speaker today, for your flexibility. And yeah, let's see you at the ExpoVirtual GreenTech with your pavilion in the global head, would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Marta.
Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye.
And now, dear visitors, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, this was our last presentation for this session. I would like to thank you for staying with us today, and also during the whole Congress and exhibition. Thank you very much to our cooperation partners, to the German chambers of Commerce in Latin America for presenting yesterday and today during these two sessions their countries. It was really, really interesting to see where there is potential in Latin America and the Caribbean, and where actually there are market entries for companies. Thank you so much also to our supporters for having supported us in this project, in this event. And in the end, I would also like to thank the translators for having translated the whole conference, the whole 3 days, the ExpoVirtual GreenTech. Thank you so much also for your work. As I said before, the ExpoVirtual GreenTech will be open today. This is the last day, so use really the chance to pass by. We have also a pavilion in the Global Hub where you can find us. We can just talk about our services, how we can help you with your business. I am looking forward to seeing you there, and also take the chance really to get in touch with our exhibitors. They are looking forward to hearing from you. Take this chance. The platform will stay open for a couple of hours today, and then I would say enjoy your day, and I hope that I can see you soon. Stay healthy, and bye-bye. See you next time.